When Ethan Harper appeared at the entrance to the Canyon Ridge Research Station in August 2024, he was barely recognizable. Barefoot, emaciated, with a tangled beard down to his chest, wearing tattered animal skins as clothing. The man who had vanished 5 years earlier, alongside his friend, in one of the most isolated areas of the Silverstone Canyon, presumed dead, now stood before the stunned staff. But the terrifying part was not his appearance. It was the story he began to tell about those 5 years, the fate of his friend, and the secret society that still lurked in the canyon's depths. On April 15, 2019, Ethan Harper and his friend, Lucas Reed, left Silverstone City at dawn. Ethan, 28, was a freelance journalist with a passion for wilderness photography. Lucas, 30, worked as a documentary filmmaker. They planned a week-long expedition into Silverstone Canyon, seeking untouched landscapes for a photography project. Their route followed the perilous Ravens Hollow Trail, a path known for its sheer cliffs, labyrinthine crevices, and minimal human contact. The hikers had all necessary permits and equipment, GPS devices, satellite phones, and supplies for 7 days. Ethan listed his sister, Clara Harper, as his emergency contact, while Lucas provided his mother, Margaret Reed. The last message from Ethan came on April 17th, a brief satellite text to Clara. "All's well. Stunning views. Lucas captured an incredible sunrise. Exploring side canyons tomorrow. Might be out of contact for a day or two. Don't worry." By April 22nd, when neither returned, search teams scoured the canyon. Rangers discovered a makeshift campsite with remnants of a fire and empty food containers, but no tents or gear. Helicopters and search dogs combed the surrounding 15-mile radius. Despite intensive efforts, Ethan and Lucas were nowhere to be found. By May, the official search was called off. The two were declared presumed dead. Investigators suggested they had likely fallen while attempting to photograph dangerous cliff edges. Families received life insurance payouts, and memorial funds were established to aid families of missing hikers. Years passed. The Ravens Hollow Trail remained open, though fewer hikers dared to traverse it. Safety regulations were tightened, with mandatory GPS registration and strict permit rules for small groups. Then, in August 2024, Ethan Harper appeared, barefoot and disheveled, at the Canyon Ridge Research Station, speaking of horrors that seemed too terrible to believe. Ethan's story began on April 18, 2019. He and Lucas had left the main trail to explore a rock formation known as the Echo Chasm, about 2 miles east of their camp. Lucas went ahead scouting for ideal filming locations, while Ethan unpacked his camera gear. Minutes later, Ethan heard a scream and the sounds of a struggle. Rushing toward the noise, he saw Lucas being grabbed by several men dressed in primitive hides, their faces covered in tattoos and paint, hair braided with bones and feathers. They wielded stone-tipped spears and obsidian knives. Ethan tried to flee, but was intercepted by 3 more men. They tied his hands with plant fiber ropes, gagged him, and dragged him through narrow crevices invisible from above. They walked barefoot along jagged paths and ledges, stripped of their shoes and most of their clothing. Hours later, they reached the mouth of a hidden cave system carved into the cliffside. Inside, torchlight revealed interconnected tunnels and chambers. Some rooms contained sleeping depressions lined with animal hides. Others stored food and tools. At the heart of the cave was an altar of flat stones, adorned with animal bones, skulls, and ochre-painted symbols. The men called themselves the Children of the Serpent and adhered to a strict hierarchy, led by an elderly scarred man known only as the Blood. Ethan and Lucas were confined to a side chamber, fed once daily with boiled meat, roots, and bitter water. Each morning, they were brought to the altar, where rituals involved chanting, burning herbs, and cutting the prisoner's hands. The blood poured onto the altar. Attempts to communicate were futile. The captors only gestured or uttered monosyllabic sounds. 2 weeks later, Lucas attempted to escape during a ritual distraction. He was caught, and the punishment was swift and horrifying. A pit was filled with burning coals, and Lucas was tied and lowered into the flames. Ethan was forced to watch as his friend perished. After Lucas's death, Ethan was allowed more freedom under supervision and coerced into participating in daily rituals, arranging bones, preparing plant concoctions, and wearing animal masks. Refusal meant burns or deep cuts. Over time, his body bore new scars, ritual burns, and a spiral tattoo branded onto his chest. Ethan described how the group believed themselves to be the last guardians of ancient rites. The modern world had desecrated sacred lands, and only continuous sacrifices could prevent catastrophe. He became a living symbol of desecration, enduring suffering and rituals, awaiting his own sacrificial fate. Months turned into years. Ethan lost track of time, marking the changing seasons only by the temperature of air coming through the cave cracks. His hair and beard grew long, cut only occasionally with sharp stones. Ritual scars multiplied, and the spiral tattoo on his chest throbbed with pain whenever the ceremonies intensified. Ethan slowly observed the cave system, noting weak points in the walls and ceiling. He discovered areas where water constantly dripped, eroding the limestone. Over time, he secretly loosened stones in one of the vulnerable sections, planning an escape. Opportunity came in July 2023, during a week of torrential rain that weakened part of the cave ceiling. As members of the cult rushed to clear debris from a collapsed passage, Ethan seized his chance. Crawling through the loose stones, he navigated narrow tunnels and slippery ledges, losing consciousness multiple times from exhaustion. Finally, he emerged at dawn at the bottom of a hidden side canyon, surrounded by cliffs over 100 feet high. The only route out was a dry creek bed leading toward the main canyon. Ethan survived on plant roots and rainwater collected in rock depressions, walking for 3 days. On the 4th day, he reached the Sky View Point lookout, where a tourist named Daniel Harper from Oregon discovered him. Harper immediately called for help and stayed with Ethan until park rangers arrived. Ethan was dehydrated, disoriented, and showed signs of severe psychological trauma. Following Ethan's rescue, a special task force was dispatched to the area he indicated as the site of his captivity. The team included local detectives, FBI agents, and anthropologists from Northern Arizona University. The terrain had changed due to heavy rains, making navigation difficult. After a week of searching, the team discovered a concealed cave system matching Ethan's descriptions. Inside, they found signs of long-term human habitation: fire pits, stone tools, fragments of animal hide clothing, and human bones. Some bones were identified as a Caucasian male between 25 and 30 years old, matching the characteristics of his friend, Lucas Reed. In the central cave, the altar described by Ethan was found, along with ritual objects. Walls bore drawings in ochre and charcoal depicting hunting, sacrifices, and astronomical symbols. Radiocarbon dating showed that some drawings were over a century old, while others were made within the last 5 years. No members of the Silent Serpent cult were found. The site had been abandoned, with only cold fire pits and scattered bones remaining. Investigators concluded that the cult had likely left the area after Ethan's escape, possibly relocating deeper into the canyon or disbanding. The case was officially closed in March 2024. The final report confirmed that Ethan and Lucas had been abducted by an isolated group living in the park. Lucas was killed during an escape attempt, and Ethan was held until his release. The perpetrators were never identified. Ethan was transferred to a specialized rehabilitation clinic in Phoenix, where he spent several months recovering physically and mentally. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with complex post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative identity disorder. Treatment included medication, therapy sessions, and group support with other survivors of abduction. Memory of the 5 years remained fragmented. He recalled fragments of his captivity, the rituals, and the deaths of other captives, but many details were blurred. Despite the trauma, Ethan gradually began to reintegrate into normal life. In January 2024, he moved in with his sister, Olivia, in Denver. She had worked tirelessly to create a stable environment, helping him adapt to everyday life and avoid triggers that could cause panic or flashbacks. Crowded places and enclosed spaces remained challenging. Technology, which he had not used in years, felt alien. The National Park Service implemented stricter security measures in remote areas. Patrols were increased, surveillance cameras installed, and satellite communication became mandatory for all multi-day hiking groups. Skywatch Trail, the canyon route where Ethan and Lucas had been abducted, was temporarily closed, pending further study of the cave systems. The story of Ethan and Lucas became one of the most mysterious and controversial cases in modern American park history. Scholars debated whether the Silent Serpent cult had truly existed, or whether some details were distorted by trauma. Regardless, the evidence ritual objects, human remains, and cave markings confirmed that Ethan's ordeal had a basis in reality. Though Ethan survived, the cost of freedom had been enormous. Years of captivity left permanent scars on his body and mind, shaping a life that would forever be cautious, haunted, and vigilant.